They told me, carry our bags or walk home. So I walked. No fight, no shouting match. I just set those 4 heavy bags on the ground, stuffed full of overpriced trinkets they couldn't be bothered to lug themselves, and stepped away from the border crossing. Anna didn't even notice at first. She was too busy posing her son in front of the big Bienvenue en Suisse sign, working to get the perfect shot. And Mark was already a few steps ahead, trying to bully the customs officer with slow, loud English like that would make a difference. My hands were trembling from the weight. My back was stiff from hours in the car. The shoes I wore weren't meant for cobblestones or hills, but that wasn't the worst of it. It was the heat, the kind that swells in your bones and makes your skin feel too tight. And not once did either of them ask if I was managing. They just piled more on me. "You're the only one not doing anything," Mark had said an hour earlier. "You could at least carry something." I reminded myself, "Helen, you've let worse things slide. You've forgiven worse." But this was different. This was the moment it hit me. They didn't see me as someone to be respected or cared for. I was just extra hands. Background. A tired old woman with a wallet and a strong back. When I left those bags lying there in the grass beside the trail, I didn't plan it. I didn't think it through. I just turned and walked in the opposite direction, following a little wooden sign pointing toward some village I couldn't even pronounce. Blue Arrow, strange name. Maybe it was a hiking path. Maybe it led to a local road. I didn't care. I only wanted to walk far enough that their voices faded from my ears. I never looked back. By the time Anna realized I was missing, I was already halfway down a shaded slope lined with fir trees. I had no passport on me. My phone was still in my pocket, but I switched it off. The silence felt like oxygen. At the bottom of the hill, the path met a quiet road where an old bus sat idling, paint chipped, lettering faded. I asked the driver in clumsy French if it went to the nearest town. He nodded. That was all I needed. €2, that's what it cost to leave them behind. The town, I later learned, was called Saint Lucie de Vevey. It looked like something torn from a postcard. Stone buildings tangled with ivy. A bakery window fogged with steam. A fountain in the square where 2 children tossed pebbles and laughed. No English signs. No selfie sticks. I found a modest inn with a sign that read Chambers Disponables and rang the bell. A woman with kind eyes and silver hair opened the door. She studied me for just a moment, then said softly, "Vous avez besoin de calme, madame?" I nodded. For the first time in years my eyes filled, not with pain or insult but with sheer relief. Yes, I needed calm. I needed to stop being a baggage carrier. Her name was Elise. She never asked for ID. I told her I didn't have a reservation. She waved it off. Not important. She gave me a small room upstairs with a view of the hills, clean sheets, no television, a kettle on the desk. I paid in cash, the emergency money I always kept folded in a tissue, tucked in my bra. Old habits die hard. I lay down fully dressed, shoes and all, and the silence wrapped around me. Not heavy, healing. For the first time in a long time, I could hear only birds and the slow breath of wind. I don't know how long I slept. When I woke, the light had shifted across the floorboards. For a moment I forgot where I was. Then I remembered I had walked away. I rinsed my face in the little sink and caught sight of myself in the mirror. The reflection startled me. Not because I looked old, I'd known that for years, but because I looked calm. Like a woman who'd done something bold and lived through it. On my phone, 5 missed calls blinked, all from Anna. No messages. She wouldn't leave one unless she could spin the story her way. She probably thought I was lost, confused, maybe fainted somewhere. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. I shut the phone off again and laid it face down on the nightstand. Tomorrow I'd find a train station. I'd buy a ticket to anywhere else. Not to punish them, but because I was done hauling what was never mine to carry. It had all started with a promise. "We want you to be part of this, Mom," Anna said on the phone 2 months before. "You've never seen Europe. We want to do it together as a family." I should have known better. Anna always knew how to phrase things so they sounded like gifts instead of setups. Still, I'd said yes. I wanted to believe just once that this would be different. I even bought myself a new suitcase. Not the big one, just a medium with wheels that actually worked. I didn't want to be a burden. I never do. I packed carefully, wrinkle-free blouses, a couple scarves, sturdy shoes. I left behind my old dresses, even the blue one I loved best. Anna had told me. Don't bring anything fancy, it's just family. I listened. Foolish me. The morning of the flight, my house was quiet. I stood by the window with a mug of tea, watching the sunlight crawl across the neighbor's lawn. Maybe this will be the trip that stitches us back together, I thought. That was all I wanted, not sightseeing, not excitement, just closeness. Something I hadn't felt in years. Mark honked the horn from the driveway even though he'd said he'd come to the door. When I climbed in the car, he didn't greet me. He was laughing into his phone, probably with one of his golf friends. Anna tossed a quick, "Hi, Mom," without turning her head, and Tyler sat with headphones on, lost in his own world. That was my welcome. At the airport, I paid the fee for the extra bag. Anna said their tickets didn't cover checked luggage, but mine did, so of course I offered. Easier that way. Isn't that what mothers do? Make things easier? I told myself not to keep score, not to start that dangerous list in my head. We flew into Paris. Mark insisted on renting the biggest car available, some luxury crossover that still barely held 4 people and all the luggage. I was told to sit in the back behind the driver. More legroom, Anna explained. What she meant was, "We don't want to talk to you." Still, I smiled, took pictures out the window, tried to point out the scenery. No one responded. Tyler was gaming on his phone. Mark muttered at the GPS. Anna scrolled like her thumbs were in a race. At a gas station stop, they all went inside, left me sitting in the car. Came back with snacks for themselves but not a sip of water for me. I told myself they were tired. Jet lag makes people selfish. In Reims at the hotel, I offered to take the pull-out sofa. "You're the smallest," Mark said. I nodded, didn't mention my hip or how long it had been since I'd slept on anything but a proper bed. I didn't want to make trouble. That night, while they went to a wine tasting, I stayed behind, curled under a scratchy hotel blanket with a handful of almonds and a TV I couldn't understand. Anna texted me a photo. The 3 of them smiling, champagne glasses high. "Wish you were here," she wrote. I almost laughed, but I kept showing up. Next morning, I was there at the cathedral, waiting while Mark argued about coffee sizes and Anna posed Tyler against medieval walls. When I asked if she could take one photo of me, she waved it off. "Maybe later, we're in a rush." At lunch, I offered to pay again. Mark joked I must be hiding a secret fortune. I didn't answer. He couldn't have understood the years of patched coats and skipped dinners it took for me to say yes to this trip. That night, I heard them whispering in the bathroom. "She's so slow," Anna hissed. "Dragging a turtle through Europe." Mark laughed. They didn't know the walls were thin. I didn't cry, but something in me curled smaller. Still, I told myself it was early, that things could get better. But the stubborn part of me, the one that had carried me through 7 decades, started a different kind of list. Not one of debts or forgiveness, but truths. The first truth I wrote silently in my head that night. They don't see me. Greg leaned back in his chair after the main course, grinning at his own words. "If you collapse, we won't be able to carry you back," he said. He chuckled. Nobody else did. He wasn't joking, and we all knew it. When the plates were cleared, Tyler waved a waiter over and held up his phone. "Could you take one of us?" he asked, pointing at himself, Julia, and Greg. They leaned in close, arms wrapped around each other, smiles wide, glasses raised. I stayed where I was, napkin folded neatly on my lap, hands resting still. Not one person said, "Wait, let's get all 4." Not one head turned my way. The waiter hesitated, glancing at me, but carried out the request. I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled quietly to myself, though something sharp pressed deep inside my chest. The check arrived a little while later. Greg made a show of patting at his pockets. "Well, damn. Must have left my wallet back at the hotel." Tyler looked confused, ready to speak, but Julia cut him off smoothly. "Mom, could you cover this? We'll Venmo you when we get back." There it was, the old familiar dance. Me reaching into my purse, silent, automatic. I glanced at the total. 321 francs. I slid my card onto the tray. They didn't even bother with a thank you. We walked out into the night air. They stayed ahead of me, laughing at something Tyler had said, while I followed a few steps behind. We passed a little bookstore with postcards in the window, and I stopped. They didn't notice. I bought one with a watercolor of a mountain. Back at the hotel later, I wrote on the back, "You won't remember this night, but I will." I didn't sign it, didn't mail it. Just tucked it into my journal, the one no one had ever asked to see. That evening Julia looked up from her phone and reminded me, "Don't forget to pack light for tomorrow. Lots of walking once we cross the border." Greg chimed in. "And maybe leave your shoulder bag. Slows you down." I nodded, always nodding. But in the bathroom mirror that night I whispered something aloud to myself. This is the last time I'll pay for my own humiliation. I shut off the light. No one said good night. I didn't say goodbye. The next morning we left Geneva after 9. The air already clung to my skin, heavy and hot before the day had even begun. Tyler groaned from the back seat. "Why can't we take a train? This car is too cramped." Greg barked back that renting was cheaper, more flexible. Julia scolded them both to stop bickering. I stayed quiet. By then, I had turned into background noise, the faint cough no one pays attention to in a crowded room. I watched the view slide past. City storefronts fading into farmland, farmland into forest. Signs switched from French to German, as though even the land wanted to tell me I was moving into another country, another chapter. But in my own family, I was still just a tourist. At the last rest stop before the border, Julia insisted we all stretch our legs. I stepped carefully onto the gravel lot, knees stiff, and before I'd even closed the door Julia called, "Mom, grab my water bottle." Greg added, "And Tyler's bag too." He's glued to his phone again. They were halfway across the lot before I'd shifted the straps onto my shoulders. One bag dug into my ribs where a snow globe jutted out. My sandals slipped against the stones. I passed a young man walking arm in arm with his grandmother. He smiled down at her, and she beamed back at him. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had looked at me that way. "Back in the car," Greg muttered. "Feels like we've got 10 bags for 3 people. Softly, I corrected. 4. He didn't hear. Or he pretended not to. The checkpoint wasn't much. Just a canopy with customs officers waving cars through. Julia wanted us to get out and walk, said it would be cute to pose by the sign. Tyler groaned but followed. I trailed behind, 2 more bags slung over my aching shoulders. They laughed, pointed at the border markers, snapped their pictures. Sweat dampened my shirt. My heel blistered raw against my sandal. Still no one looked back. And then I heard Greg. "If she can't keep up, she can carry our bags or walk home." He tossed it over his shoulder, half laughing. Julia stayed quiet. Tyler chuckled. That was the moment. Not anger, not a scene, just stillness. I stopped, looked down at Julia's embroidered tote, Tyler's tech-stuffed backpack. I set them gently on the grass, adjusted the straps so they wouldn't topple, smoothed the handles. Then I stood there for one last breath before turning the opposite way. There was a sign, Blue Arrow St. Lucy Duis, 3 kilometers. That was all I needed. My feet burned. My arms ached. My chest hammered with something caught between shame and release. But I kept walking. I didn't look back. I didn't leave a note. I didn't owe them one. With each step, their laughter, Greg's voice, even the sound of the bag settling into the dirt. All of it faded until it belonged to another life. The road dipped, shaded by trees, and I followed it. Soon, a tilted wooden sign appeared, "Chambers. Rooms." That was enough. I rang the bell at a white-shuttered inn with flowers spilling from window boxes. The woman who opened the door wore a linen apron, silver hair pulled tight, her face lined and kind. "Bonjour," she greeted. "Do you speak any English?" I asked, my throat dry. A little, she smiled. "I need a room. Just one. Just for a few days." She studied me gently, then said, "Of course you are tired. I can see." She led me upstairs to a small blue room with a wooden bed and a view of the hills. It wasn't luxury. It was clean, quiet, and blessedly empty of people who needed things from me. I dropped onto the bed, shoes still on, purse still strapped across my chest, and slept 5 straight hours. When I woke, the sun had begun to sink. My head ached, not from sadness but from too much noise finally gone. I checked my things. Passport, wallet, phone off and tucked away. I hadn't told anyone where I was. I hadn't said goodbye. And I realized I didn't need to. When someone tells you, in front of your own grandchild, that your role is to carry their bags or disappear, they've already erased you. I just chose to write the next part myself. At the front desk, I paid cash for 3 nights. Gave a name that wasn't mine, Ruth Caldwell, my middle name paired with my mother's maiden name. just in case Julia thought to involve the consulate. In the lobby, I used the old computer to check train schedules. Direct line to Geneva Airport. Flight home through Frankfurt in 2 days. I booked it. Window seat. Confirmation email in my inbox. I didn't cry. Not when I booked, not when I called the bank, not even when I realized half my clothes were still stuffed in Greg's trunk. They could keep them. Let them unpack my sweaters in silence and wonder. That evening I sat in the inn's tiny dining room. Ordered roasted potatoes, fish, white wine. The owner's cat brushed against my ankle. Outside, the hills glowed gold in the last light. And the thought came to me, simple and steady. This isn't an escape. It's an arrival. I had stepped into a life where I didn't have to force a smile for people who treated me like an old chair they forgot they were sitting on. I had found a place where silence wasn't punishment. It was peace. They told me I could walk home and I did, just not in the way they imagined. The next morning I woke to birdsong and the creak of old floorboards beneath my feet. Not Greg's restless pacing, not Julia snapping at someone. I opened the window, let the early light spill in. Cool air brushed against my face. Somewhere in the distance a bell rang. Maybe church, maybe school, I didn't know. But it felt like I was in a place where people lived simply, quietly, with respect. I boiled water in the little kettle on the dresser and made tea. No one rushed me, no one rolled their eyes while I stirred in honey. I drank it barefoot by the window, watching the hills blush with sunlight. It was the first morning in longer than I could remember that I wasn't bracing for someone to need something from me. Downstairs at breakfast, the innkeeper Marianne asked how I'd slept. Better than I have in years, I said. You stay long. Her English was hesitant but clear. Just until tomorrow. Then I'll go home. She paused, her eyes soft. Trouble. I thought about it, then shook my head. No, not trouble. Just too much noise. Her smile deepened, like she understood more than I'd spoken. Quiet is good for the bones, she said, pouring more coffee before leaving me in peace. Later that morning, I wandered narrow streets with names I couldn't read. Gardens full of tomatoes and lavender leaned against stone walls. Wooden signs creaked in the breeze. Bicycles rested against fences. No one stared. No one told me what I should or shouldn't be doing. A little girl waved at me through a gate. I waved back. That was all. It felt like healing. Not the kind where someone pats your back, but the kind where no one disturbs you, where your soul finally stretches out like a rope that's been knotted too long. By noon I was sitting in the shaded courtyard with my notebook. I hadn't written in years, but the words came anyway. I scribbled down what I saw, what I heard, and what I'd finally decided I wouldn't carry anymore. Then I turned my phone on. 17 missed calls, most from Julia, a few from Greg, one from AU's consulate number. No voicemails, just endless rings like fists pounding on a locked door. One text from Tyler. Grandma, where are you? Mom's freaking out. I stared at it, then deleted it. I called my bank. A kind-voiced woman named Rebecca answered. Her soft southern lilt almost soothing. I asked about recent transactions, made sure there were no holds. She confirmed everything was fine. Before I hung up, I stopped. One more thing, I said. How do I remove someone's access from my account? You'd like to revoke access? Yes. Would you like me to remove Julia Mitchell? Yes, I answered, steady as stone. My hands didn't shake. It felt like pruning a dead branch off a tree. Done, she said. Next I called the airline. Paid the change fee. Upgraded my seat. Window, bulkhead, early boarding. Chose chicken for the meal, no wine. I didn't need to be dulled or drowsy. I'd have enough silence in the sky. That afternoon I asked Marianne about printing. She pointed me toward a bakery 2 blocks down. I walked slowly, pausing to breathe in the roses climbing a fence. At the bakery I typed a letter. Short, blunt. Not an apology, not a confession. Just truth on white paper, folded twice and slipped into my purse. I wouldn't send it. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Proof I'd finally said it out loud, even if only to myself. That evening I sat in the inn's back garden and watched the sun fall behind the hills. The breeze carried hints of mint and chimney smoke. A blackbird landed on the railing, studied me, then flew off. I thought, I've got one more night to be no one's baggage. One more night to just be a woman in a room with a bed and a window. Tomorrow I'd go home. But not to the same house, not to the same life. They told me to walk home. I did. And on the way I found myself. The following morning I woke before dawn. Not to an alarm, but because my body already knew this day was important. I sat wrapped in the inn's blanket, feet tucked under me, listening to the quiet hills still painted in shadow. No birds yet. No footsteps. Just my breath and the hum of a town waking. Or maybe me waking. I held my notebook again. Didn't write. Just touched the blank page. Sometimes emptiness is its own comfort. A reminder that new beginnings still exist. I thought of George. My George. A good man, not flawless but steady in the ways that mattered. He used to tell me I was the strong one. I never believed him. I thought strong meant loud, decisive, bold. Now I know better. Strength is staying. Staying when money runs tight and patience runs thinner. Staying with your child through every slammed door, every poor choice, every wound you swallow for the sake of peace. But staying isn't the same as shrinking, and somewhere along the line I forgot that. Julia hadn't always been like this. When she was little, she'd pick daisies from the neighbor's yard and call me the most beautiful mom in the world. She'd cry when I left for work, even for a few hours. She'd crawl into my bed after nightmares and wrap her arms around my neck like she never wanted to let go. I don't know when it shifted. Maybe when I couldn't afford brand-name clothes. Maybe when I refused to pay for her second wedding. Maybe when I stopped agreeing with everything just to keep her calm. Greg came into her life already sure she wasn't enough, and somehow she believed him. Passed that belief along like a cold, quiet, contagious. I thought love would drown out pride. But pride never listens. Pride only talks. I don't hate them. Truth is, I wish I did. Hate would make this easier. But it isn't hate, it's grief. Grief because I still love them. I still remember who they once were. But I've accepted they don't love me the way I need. They love me when I'm useful, when I'm quiet, when I say yes and smile through the bruises on my dignity. That isn't love. That's performance. And I've retired from that role. At breakfast, Marian set down warm bread and apricot preserves. Today is travel? She asked. Yes. Back to the airport. You okay? She asked softly. I smiled, not too brightly, just enough. Yes. I think I finally am. She didn't push. She just nodded the way women do when they've lived long enough to recognize a private war won. Packing didn't take long. Half the clothes I'd started with, none of the weight. I left behind a scarf folded neatly on the chair. A gift for the room that gave me back myself. At the desk I tried to pay again. Keep it, I said. For something beautiful. Marian pressed my hand. Bon voyage, she whispered. The taxi driver offered to help with my bag. No thank you, I told him. It was the lightest load I'd carried in years. As we pulled away, I looked back at the inn just once. No wave. Some endings don't need ceremony. Just a full stop. Back at the border, they didn't notice I was missing until the customs officer asked for all passengers. Julia turned to call for me and saw only the bags, sitting neat and untouched where I had set them down. For a moment she probably thought I was nearby. Maybe in the bathroom, maybe lagging behind. But when the seconds stretched, Greg swore. Tyler grabbed his phone. Julia's voice rose from puzzled to panicked. They didn't understand yet. They still believed I was steps behind, still believed I'd catch up like I always did. But this time I hadn't. This time I let them walk ahead while I walked away. While they retraced their steps, asked strangers, flagged down police, I was already at the airport. I didn't hurry. I ate a small meal, bought a paperback crime novel, George's favorite kind, and watched planes take off through the glass. By the time Julia realized, my flight was boarding in 2 hours. She called 17 times in 1 hour. Then Greg. Then Tyler. No messages. Just ringing, demanding. I pictured them standing together, frantic. Maybe she got lost. Try again. Call her again. At 3:15 Julia emailed. Mom, where are you? This isn't funny. We've called the police. Please respond. We're worried. I didn't reply. At 3:47 another. We've contacted the consulate. If something happened, we need to know. Please, we're scared. But I knew better. It wasn't about me, not really. It was about control, about the story they wanted to tell. The quiet mother who pays, who waits, who smiles and carries the bags. Not the woman who walked away. That wasn't in their script. As I boarded, the sun was setting. The windows turned to gold. The terminal lights flickered awake. I settled into my seat, bulkhead, window, early boarding. No one asked me to switch, no one hinted I should give it up. I spread the blanket over my lap, closed my eyes, and let the steady hum of the engines drown out the buzzing phone buried deep in my purse. Let it ring. Let them wonder. I wasn't lost. I was simply finished being found by people who never really saw me. When the plane touched down in Frankfurt for my connection, I powered the phone back on. More messages. One from A.U.S. Embassy staffer, crisp and official. One from Greg, sharp and angry. What the hell is going on? Call us. Two from Tyler, clipped and impatient. And one from Julia. Please just let me know you're safe. I read that one twice. It was the closest I'd heard her sound to the daughter I used to know, before Greg, before the frost settled in, before she learned to be disappointed in me. For half a second I almost replied. But I didn't. Some silences are earned. The connecting flight was smaller, quieter. A red-eye bound for the States. As the plane lifted, I pressed my forehead to the window. Below, Europe fell away. A patchwork quilt of lights scattered across shadow. And I thought, let them search. Let them feel the emptiness where I used to stand. Let them sit with that silence and finally wonder why it's there. Back in the U.S. I didn't go straight home. Didn't call the house sitter. Didn't check the mailbox or stop at the market where the clerks know my name. Instead, I took a taxi 2 towns over, to a lakeside I'd never seen before. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere anonymous. I paid cash, asked for 2 nights. The woman at the desk looked to be in her late 50s, younger than me, but her eyes carried the same weary kindness I'd seen in Marianne back in Switzerland. Traveling alone? She asked. Yes. Business or pleasure? I gave a faint smile. Closure. She didn't ask more. The room overlooked the water. A balcony, a wooden chair. A kettle with packets of tea. No TV, no phone, no noise. It was perfect. I spent the first day walking along the lake, watching ducks waddle in pairs across the grass. I sat on a bench, let the reeds whisper in the breeze. No one called my name. No one handed me a bag. For once, I wasn't anybody's mother. I was just a woman in a coat walking by the water. The second evening, I wandered down to the lounge for tea. The fire in the hearth burned low. A man sat near the window with a book. Gray hair, lean frame, neat jacket. He looked up, nodded. I nodded back. That could have been the end of it. But when I settled by the fire, he spoke. Beautiful time of year for this lake, he said. I agreed. He introduced himself. Robert. Ruth, I said without thinking. The name slipped out easy now. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't ready to be Irene again. He didn't pry. Didn't ask what I did or where I came from. We talked about books, about the lake, about how certain silences deserve to be honored. I come here every year, he told me. Since my wife passed. This was our place. I'm sorry, I said softly. He gazed out the window. She always said it's easier to breathe near water. She was right. We didn't talk long, but when he stood to leave, he said, Good night, Ruth. Sleep well. And I did, better than I had in years. The next morning I checked out with my backpack slung over one shoulder, passport zip tight in front. At the desk I left a note for Robert. Nothing more than a line on hotel stationery. You were right. The silence here is good for the bones. Thank you. R. No number. No return address. Some kindnesses belong only to the moment they're given. Like sunlight through a window at just the right time. I took a taxi home. The driver tried to make small talk. I let him. We passed the diner with the burnt coffee and the perfect pie, the library, the grocery store. Everything looked the same, but I wasn't. When we turned onto my street, the familiar ache tugged at me. The one I always felt, seeing that porch, that garden, that front door no one had knocked on in weeks. But this time I didn't let it settle in. Because I knew I wasn't staying. Not in that house. Not in that life. They told me to walk home. I had. And now I was ready to leave it behind for good. The house was just as I'd left it. Porch swept. Mail stacked neatly. The fern on the steps still green. The house sitter had done her job. I'd hired her for 2 weeks. I was back in 8 days. I opened the door with my own key. Silence. No notes on the counter. Just the sound of my own footsteps echoing across the tile. I set my bag down but didn't sit. Didn't unpack. I went straight to the sideboard drawer and pulled out the papers I'd been too tired, too polite, too hopeful to change. My will. My power of attorney. The house deed Julia had convinced me 3 years ago to co-sign. Just easier this way. It hadn't been easier. It had made me smaller. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, a man who'd guided me since George died. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said warmly, "is everything all right? I need to amend my will," I told him, "and revoke some permissions." A pause. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." And in his tone I heard it, that careful shift lawyers make when they realize something fundamental has changed. "All right. Let's begin." It didn't take long. My will was rewritten, dividing my estate among 3 nieces who still sent cards, still called, still remembered me. My half of the house, I'd sell it. Julia could buy me out if she cared to. If not, the sale would be forced. I'd already found a realtor. My account's sole control. Julia's name removed. Power of attorney revoked. 3 phone calls. 2 forms. 1 notary. No drama. Just paper. Funny how years of erasure could be undone in a single afternoon. I spent the next 2 days packing. Kept only what mattered. The plate from the market. My mother's earrings. 2 coats. A box of letters. Few favorite books. Donated the rest. Julia's vase. The blanket she left behind. The honeymoon magnet she tossed on my fridge. I wrapped them carefully and mailed them to her doorstep. No note. Let her open the box and wonder. I found a small apartment across town. 1 bedroom, top floor. Sunlight pouring onto the kitchen table. I signed the lease in person. The agent, a brisk woman with a sensible haircut, handed me the keys with a smile. "Moving out of a big place?" she asked. "Big enough," I said. "Downsizing?" "No." I paused then smiled. "Right-sizing." She laughed, not unkindly. "I like that," she said. And so did I. That night, in the nearly empty house, I ate dinner on a paper plate. Just a sandwich, a cup of tea, and a square of chocolate. I sat at the same kitchen table where Julia once told me I should be grateful they were including me. I stared at the patch on the floor where Greg had spilled wine and laughed while I bent to clean it. And I let those memories move through me. Not like a storm, but like a breeze I no longer needed to brace against. Then I walked slowly through each room on purpose. Not to say goodbye, but to reclaim it. It had been mine once, and now I was closing that chapter. Later, I wrote a letter I never intended to send. "Dear Tyler, you'll never read this. Not because I'm afraid of what you'd say, I doubt you'd bother, but because this letter isn't for your inbox. It's for me. A way to put these words down so I don't keep carrying them. You used to call me Grandma with 2 M's, followed by a bear hug so big it knocked the wind out of me. You used to fall asleep on my lap watching cartoons, drooling on my shirt, and I let you even when it stained. I used to save every drawing you made. Dragons with 3 heads, crooked rockets, lopsided hearts. You don't remember, but I do. I remember everything. I remember the last time you grabbed my hand in a parking lot, without anyone telling you to. I remember the first time you ignored me in a room full of people like I wasn't there. I remember when your eyes stopped lighting up at the sight of me. You didn't turn cruel all at once. It came slow, the way winter leaks through old window frames. First I barely noticed, but it was there. In the sigh when I asked for help unlocking my phone. In the way you mocked my ringtone under your breath. In how you never, not once, offered to carry a bag that wasn't your own. 17 is old enough to know better. This isn't about forgetting to say thank you. It's about not seeing another person as worthy of one. That day at the border, you laughed when Greg joked I should carry the bags or walk home. I don't think you even knew what you were laughing at. But when you joined in, you made it real. You turned cruelty into fact. Here's what I need you to know. I am not fragile just because I'm older. I am not your servant because I stay quiet. And I am not your audience just because you've got Wi-Fi and sharper elbows. I had a life before your mother was born. Before you were even imagined. Dreams, disappointments, joy, grief. Scars you'll never see. Stories you'll never ask to hear. I walked away not because I was weak, but because all of you assumed I never would. Your mother didn't lose me. She gave me away piece by piece, one joke, one dismissal, one request at a time. And finally I stopped accepting the scraps. I don't hate you, Tyler. You're still just a boy. A boy raised in a house where men get loud and women get tired. A boy who doesn't yet know that silence from the people who love you isn't always safety. Sometimes it's surrender. And sometimes it's the warning before a door slams shut for good. Maybe someday you'll remember that trip. Not the landmarks, not the food, but the empty space where I should have been when you turned around. Maybe you'll wonder where I went. Maybe you won't. But I'll tell you anyway, here on this page. I went somewhere I was seen. Not because I needed applause. Not because I demanded love. But because I finally remembered what real love does. It makes room. You didn't make room for me, Tyler. So I made room for myself. And here it is quiet. And it is good. Love, Grandma. You'll never hold this letter. But maybe someday you'll feel it. When Julia first called after I got back, I didn't answer. Not the first time, not the second. She left 2 voicemails. The first was clipped, almost brittle. Mom, I don't know what happened. We were worried. Please call when you get this. The second, a day later, was softer. But it still carried that old undertone. The one that always made things sound like my fault. You left without saying anything. We searched. Tyler was scared. Just talk to me. Scared? He laughed when Greg told me to carry their bags or walk home. Funny how fear only shows up when silence answers back. I didn't call. I waited. And on the 4th morning there she was. Standing on the porch of my new apartment, clutching a paper cup of coffee like a peace offering. She knocked once, twice, then stepped back, scanning the hallway like she wasn't sure she had the right door. I opened it. Her eyes widened. She looked thinner, tired. Mom, she whispered. I stepped aside. She came in. No hug. No greetings. Just the long pause of a breath held too long. She sat at the little table by the window, the one I'd already claimed. My journal, my teacup, a small vase of wildflowers. She looked around like she was standing in someone else's life. You moved, she said. I did. Why didn't you tell me? I paused. You didn't ask. It landed. I saw it sting. She held the coffee between her palms but didn't drink. Tyler was scared, she said again. I'm sure he was. You just disappeared. No, I said quietly. I walked away. That's different. Julia looked down. Her hair, usually flawless, was tied back in a loose bun, stray gray strands showing through. She didn't speak, so I did. You told me in 100 small ways that I was a burden, that I was background, that I should be grateful for crumbs of inclusion. And I believed you for a long time. She flinched but stayed quiet. You all forgot I was a person. That's not true, she whispered. It is, I said. Maybe not deliberate, but real. She blinked quickly. I just wanted us to have time together as a family. You wanted convenience, I answered softly. You wanted me there. As long as I didn't take up space. Silence. Then she tried. I didn't mean to make you feel. Don't. I cut her off. Don't make this about feelings. Make it about what happened. Her mouth closed. She nodded once. I turned to the window, watched a neighbor water her plants. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. I wouldn't blame you if you were. I'm disappointed. And I'm done apologizing for existing. Her eyes filled. She finally spoke, soft, unpolished. I came to apologize. Then do it. Her throat worked. I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rehearsed. Just spoken. And I believed her. At least the part of her brave enough to show up at my door. But an apology isn't a reset button. It's only a beginning. I'm not coming back, I said. I know. I'll be civil. I'll answer when it matters. But I'm not the same mother you left at the border. She nodded, tears slipping now. I don't want you to be. Maybe you never should have been. That I didn't expect. But it didn't sound cruel. It sounded like the truth. She left 20 minutes later. No hug. No promises. Just one line at the door. If you ever want to see me, you don't have to carry anything. I nodded. It was the only start I could accept. After she left, I stood in the stillness of my little apartment. Not triumphant. Not vengeful. Just free. And in that quiet I whispered to myself, finally, I'm here.